I would say the Warrior is one of the most played classes in Vanilla WoW, and for good reason. They're not only a lot of fun, but they really are just crazy in terms of output as well. Throw in the fact that you can literally tank by almost feeling like your primary objective is just to do as much damage as possible, and you have the recipe for absolute success. Or absolute class stacking, but either way, it's still a lot of fun. The question is, have Blizzard took all their learnings from the last 20 years and realised that Warriors truly are the top dogs of Vanilla and brought them in line with the other classes, or more to the point, raised all the other classes and specs up to the Warriors level? No, of course they haven't. Warrior's still absolutely going to be broken. I genuinely believe just by looking at these runes, Warrior is looking even more insane than it was before, and I do really believe by the time we reach level 60 and start working on that kind of end game, they're going to absolutely destroy anything in their path. Now, we know part of why Warrior is so ridiculously strong is because of how they scowl. And while at lower levels they might not be the absolute god tier DPS that you're going to be at level 60, I still think you're going to have a great time on a Warrior all the way up to level 60 through all of these different level brackets. So 25, then 40, then 50, and obviously finally 60. And this is thanks to some of the crazy runes that they get, and actually your choice of runes is so cool that there's going to be situations where you'll likely use the vast majority of them either during a raid or when you're leveling, or even if you're just doing dungeons. First of all, recap time. If this is the first season of Discovery video you've seen, you might not know what runes are. Runes are class-altering modifications that you put onto your gear. As it's called Season of Discovery, you can probably guess that these runes are going to be discovered, and at the moment we have absolutely no idea where from. What we do know is there could be world events, extra quest chains, hidden chests in dungeons, raids, or even just out in the world. And when you find one of these runes, it'll go into your rune book, which is like your spell book, and you've got it forever. So you can then freely switch between runes. On a fight-by-fight basis, you just need to be out of combat. In Phase 1 of Season of Discovery, you can only get to level 25, which is going to limit you to 16 talent points, and you're going to have access to 12 runes in total. These runes will either go on your chest, your hands, or your legs. So let's jump in. We'll start with the glove runes, but before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff, because hopefully you're going to enjoy the video, so you might as well like it now so you don't forget to do it when you leave. So firstly, the glove runes, and I've got to be honest, the choices are absolutely bonkers. This is actually one of the things that draws me to a Warrior more than I've ever been drawn to a Warrior before. I really do like options, and I like the fact that some of these runes can be used in different situations. But starting with Devastate, which obviously is going to be your tanking rune. Devastate is nothing new, however, working like this, it absolutely is. So while you're in defensive stance and you have a shield equipped, Sunder Armor will also deal 100% weapon damage, increased by 10% per application of Sunder Armor already on the target. So you're not actually getting Devastate as such, it is actually just modifying the way Sunder Armor works. So when you've got it stacked 5 times, you're going to be doing 150% weapon damage just by further pressing Sunder Armor. In the protection tree through talents, you can reduce the rage cost of Sunder, bringing it down to 12 rage. So when this is stacked, you're getting 150% weapon damage for just 12 rage on an ability that already baseline causes a high amount of threat. It's going to be absolutely crazy for you prot warriors. I'd say more so at later game, because at 25, even if you dumped every talent point into protection, you're only going to be able to get 1 point into improved Sunder. Next up, we've got Endless Rage, and quite honestly, there's not a lot to say here. You generate 25% more rage from all damage you deal. Having more rage means more abilities that you can press. Unfortunately, if you're trying to prepare for the level 25 bracket, so as in Phase 1, you've not got a ridiculous amount of buttons that you can press anyway. So actually, the next rune is super powerful, because it's Quick Strike. And what Quick Strike is a reckless instant melee attack with your two-handed weapon dealing X amount of damage based on your attack power, so this will scale as you obviously become more powerful and get more gear. Doing physical damage, of course, and this ability benefits from and triggers all effects associated with Heroic Strike, which is actually a very important part of this ability because it costs 20 rage. Very early on, you could reduce this down to 17 rage by reducing the cost of Heroic Strike abilities by 1 rage point, and it gives you an extra rage spender because there's going to be times where, as we look at other runes, where you might be pooling rage. So you're waiting for a specific amount of rage, and then you're going to start pumping. So actually being able to have Quick Strike, which is no doubt going to proc from Wind Fury. So obviously if you've got a Feral Druid in the group, you know, if you've watched a Feral Druid video, well, not Feral Druid, but just Druid in general, check the video out up here somewhere, wherever I decide to put it. Ordinarily in Vanilla, because you're trying to get extra attacks as a warrior for more chances to proc Wind Fury, you would be using something like Hamstring because it's super cheap. It does 0 damage, but obviously it's very cheap. It's like 10 rage. So now having something to spend rage on that is actually going to do damage as well as proc Wind Fury is going to be absolutely insane. Obviously, this does require a two-handed weapon, which means you would have options in whether you wanted to go down in arms or you wanted to go down into fury. Overall, I think quick strike's going to be absolutely amazing, and I think most people that want a big two-handed weapon are going to be using it. But the next one up I absolutely love, and it's single-minded fury. It's an extremely basic rune that we don't need to spend a great deal of time talking about, but while dual wielding, your physical damage and movement speed are increased by 10%. So getting the extra physical damage while you're dual wielding is great, but think about it. If this is a rune that you actually pick up quite early, let's say by, I don't know, level 6 or even level 10, we know how painful it's going to be just walking around everywhere and not having a mount. So getting that 10% movement speed would actually be massive. And there's a lot of runes that obviously will work alongside this, but I still think two-handed is the way to go, if I'm completely honest, as in if we're talking at level 25. But I think while leveling, single-minded fury could be actually very good. It's just the next rune that makes that a difficult choice, which is Victory Rush. And if any of you have actually used this version of Victory Rush before, where it heals you when you use it, it's absolutely insane for leveling. Honestly, out of all of these runes, no matter how good Quick Strike ends up being, no matter how fun it is to use Single-Minded Fury, or even if I wanted to level as Protection, I wouldn't even be tempted by Devastate, because Victory Rush just keeps you pumping. When you're out questing, after every kill, you're going to have this available for the next target that you charge into, because it only has an 8-second cooldown, and it heals you for 10% of your maximum health. Honestly, if you're soloing, if you're just like, solo questing all the way to 25, and you get hold of this, I wouldn't use any of the others. Genuinely, I would go Victory Rush all in for leveling. And then I'd probably go two-handed with Quick Strike at level 25. And honestly, I think it's just because of how it's going to actually interact with Wind Fury that's going to make it exceptionally powerful. Not to say that the other options aren't great though. 25% more Rage could work for you, and Single-Minded Fury, if you really like dual wield, absolutely could work as well. And Devastate, if you're going to be Protection, it's kind of a no-brainer. Unless you're going to two-handed tank, which I could see happening. In which case, even if you were two-handed tanking, you might use Quick Strike. Moving on to the chest runes. First up, we've got Blood Frenzy, where each time you deal bleed damage, you gain 3 Rage. Now, whilst this doesn't sound overly impressive, if you was to go down into the arms tree and pick up Improved Rend, that's not really what we're actually after, but it's leading on to Deep Wounds, where your critical strikes cause the opponent to bleed over 12 seconds. So you're going to have Rend up, and you're going to have Deep Wounds up, ticking every few seconds, and you're going to be getting 3 Rage from every one of those ticks. So actually, it is a lot of Rage that you'd be gaining if you was to take Blood Frenzy. It's not actually as bad as it sounds. Unfortunately, the problem is when you've got something like Flagellation, it makes the decision pretty easy that you're probably not going to use Blood Frenzy. Because what Flagellation does is you gain a 25% bonus to physical damage done for 12 seconds after activating Blood Rage or Berserker Rage. Now, like you can see here, this is everything you're going to have at level 25. Unfortunately, Blood Rage is the only one you're going to have that's on a 1-minute cooldown. Now, don't get me wrong, 25% damage for 12 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown is an absolutely bonkers personal cooldown to be using, for a DPS output cooldown. And it's going to get even better in later game when you get access to Berserker Rage, which comes at level 32 and only has a 30-second cooldown. Now, yes, you'll have to go into Berserker stance to use this, but it's only a 30-second cooldown, and the buff for the 25% damage is going to last 12 seconds. And then you've got Blood Rage as well, and that's a lot of uptime, which is why I said no matter how good any of these other ones are, Flagellation, if it doesn't change, is pretty much just going to be the go-to chest rune for every warrior. In my opinion, including tanks, because if we cover what you could consider as the tank rune next, it would be Warbringer. I consider Warbringer more of a PvP rune, but don't get me wrong, as a tank, I see the power of being able to charge in combat, to pick ads up, to pick the boss up, to go out and do something else and then very quickly charge back to maybe in a taunt rotation to take it off your off tank or whatever. But your charge, intercept and intervene abilities are now usable while in combat and in any stance, and will remove movement impairing effects when activated. So it's extremely strong. For PvP, for PvE, for absolutely everything. When you put in Flagellation in the mix against this, it's hard to say that any of these other chest runes would be worth using. Is it just me? Tell me in the comments. Is Flagellation just too strong? Maybe not in phase 1 at 25 when it's on a 1-minute cooldown just attached to Blood Rage, but once you get Berserker Rage, that's absolutely nuts. But Warbringer still will have its place, and quite honestly, in PvP, it probably would be tough to decide between the 25% damage or being able to charge and remove all your roots and everything. And then finally, Raging Blow, which I consider a very lackluster ability, mainly because of how it's used. So firstly, it's a ferocious strike that deals 100% weapon damage, but can only be used while in Rage, Berserker Rage, or Blood Rage is active. Now, the reason I say it's lackluster is because it's on an 8-second cooldown. When you Blood Rage, that only lasts for 10 seconds. So in a single Blood Rage, you'd be able to press Raging Blow twice, but it's only 100% weapon damage. You're literally going to be able to press this ability twice a minute. That's not particularly exciting, but you're like, wait, what about when you're enraged? Okay, so if we look at that, if you're not familiar with vanilla and you've been playing things like Wrath of the Lich King, you've probably forgot that Enrage only procs when you're the victim of a critical strike. So if you're in a PvE encounter and you're DPSing as Fury, you need something hitting you and hopefully critting you so you're actually going to be able to get Enrage up. And if we get rid of some of these talents, you can see at level 25, you'd only be able to get 1 point in it anyway. So you're having to go very deep in Fury, possibly ignoring other important talents just to be able to get a 5% damage bonus for 12 seconds on the off chance you're a victim of a critical strike. Now, don't get me wrong, Enrage is an absolute must in PvP, but are you really going to go for Raging Blow in PvP? Probably not. So it's a bit of a weird one. I'm not a fan of it personally. If Enraged changed to where you deal damage, you have a chance of becoming enraged, or when you deal a critical strike, you become enraged like future expansions, then obviously I think it would work really well. Again though, a later game when you get Berserk Enrage, it will be a little bit better because you're going to be able to press it a couple more times a minute. Overall though, the chest runes, I think Flagellation just blows everything out of the water to the point where it would be very difficult for me to actually want to even discover any other runes if I already had Flagellation. And then finally moving us onto the legs, and these will be very quick because honestly, they're actually quite boring. And let's start with the most boring, Furious Thunder. Thunderclap now increases the time between attacks by an additional 6% and can be used in any stance. Cool. I really have got nothing else to say about it. I mean, Thunderclap's great, but again, when we look at one of these other runes, it's going to be very difficult for you to ever want to even discover Furious Thunder. Frenzied Assault is for the two-handed enjoyers, and while wielding two-handed weapons, your attack speed is increased by 20%. I mean, that's cool, and that could be a real good option, but it is going up against one of the most powerful runes in the game, which is the final one, Consumed by Rage. Consumed by Rage enrages you and grants you 25% melee damage bonus for 12 seconds or up to a maximum of 12 swings after you exceed 80 rage. Now, while it's early days and this could absolutely end up with an internal cooldown of sorts, or a 30-second cooldown, let's say, so you can't just proc it back to back, without a cooldown it's absolutely nuts. And if you pair this with Flagellation, where with Consumed by Rage you wait until you get over 80 rage, and then you force Flagellation to proc by using Blood Rage, you're going to be doing 50% extra damage for 12 seconds. And the thing is, even from level 1, it doesn't take that long to get to 80 rage. You'll get to 80 rage on one mob, ready to benefit from all that 25% on the next mob. You know, that's talking if you was out grinding using this, because quite honestly, I don't see the point of using any of the other runes at all on the legs. It would literally just be Consumed by Rage for every single person that's a warrior. Because honestly, even the two-handed weapons increasing your attack speed by 20%, even if I was using a two-handed weapon, I'd still be going for Consumed by Rage. And in a nutshell, that's the warrior, even though it was a very probably long nutshell. How long have I been recording for? Nearly 30 minutes. I'll see how short I can get this down to. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video. I've only got 2 classes left, Warlock and Rogue. Going to try and get them both out in the next 2 days. And then one big bumper video taking all of the learnings over the last all 9 classes and putting it into one big video, but with a lot of amendments to each class where we've found out different things, such as the mage being nerfed before it's even gone live, you know. So all of that will be then brought up to date for one big class picking guide video, basically. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy all of these Season of Discovery videos. Make sure you like and subscribe before you leave, and I'll see you on the next one.